Hello and welcome to some Jerks Talk About Games. I'm your co-host, Mango.
And I am your co-host, Buddy.
And today we're going to talk about when storytelling advice goes bad, or when good storytelling advice goes bad. But before we do that, Buddy, we want to show the folks at home what it is we do on this podcast.
On this podcast, we like to talk about games, and this one is pretty not related. We're not all that games related. we actually I kind of struggled to get a topic out of today's sort of episode, but as we were sort of shooting the shit, I started describing a pet peeve of mine that I have come across because of watching Stranger Things again in preparation for the 5th and final season, which I think comes out in like a week and a half or something. And I feel like that's where we're gonna, I don't know, that's where we're gonna start. That's where we're gonna take it. So to run back the clock a little bit and help you guys understand what I'm finding annoying in the television series Stranger Things, and I'm so sorry, I'm going to spoil some minor bullshit for you guys, okay? In the television series Stranger Things, at the end of the 3rd season, Chief Hopper, who's been around from the beginning of the episode, or from the beginning of the series, he's the police chief played by David Harbour that everybody likes. He sacrifices himself by throwing himself into this gigantic Russian laser machine that is going to cut between dimensions and open up a door to the Upside Down, which is the dimension that they, find in the 1st season and all the rest of it. And in doing so, it looks like he dies, okay? But then you find out that Hopper is actually alive. They do this in a post-credit scene, that Hopper is actually alive. What has happened is he has been transported somehow. It's not really super well explained, or maybe it is and I just wasn't paying enough attention, to Russia. And he gets captured by the Russians and taken to a Siberian prison where he is just working on this railroad in the middle of the winter, and it's brutal and it sucks and all the rest of it, okay? Now, you might be saying, Buddy, I watched the 1st season of Stranger Things. Isn't that the show about, 10-year-olds in the 80s who are living through simultaneously a Steven Spielberg movie and a Stephen King novel? Yes, that is what it is. And it is all centered on Hawkins, Indiana, this spooky sort of small town, suburban, whatever, that has this government lab in it and all of the rest of that kind of stuff. And what ends up happening in season 4 is Joyce Byers, the mom of the, Winona Ryder, major character. She ends up literally in the 1st episode going to Alaska and finding a like participating in this jailbreak plan to get Chief Hopper out of Russia, and the plan goes wrong and they all get captured and it's a gigantic nuisance, and they don't actually get the material thing of Chief Hopper to Indiana until the very end of the season. So for an entire season, Hopper and Joyce Byers, 2 main characters, are exiled to fucking Alaska, where they're dealing with this Russian prison stuff, where all of the other interesting action is taking place over the course of the season, which has to do with the fact that there's the plot of the 4th season, I guess I won't spoil this, is that there's a dark figure on the other side, in the Upside Down, who the kids nickname Vecna, as in Hand of Vecna and Eye of Vecna. The kids nickname this guy Vecna, and Vecna is using his psychic powers to slip between sort of worlds, right? And kill people in gruesome, fucked up ways in the real world from the Upside Down. This causes a series of murders. Everybody thinks that there's a serial killer out, but it's this guy, and the kids are trying to hunt him. Joyce Byers and Hopper don't interact with Vecna at all, right? They show up right at the end, basically. And the fact that their storyline is so sort of curtailed is the thing that I was deeply complaining about. We theoretically call this a plot cul-de-sac. I don't know. I feel like I was talking a lot. Where do you want to take things from there?
Yeah. So part of our discussion around this, that I thought we could make something out of it, is just talking about like where this comes from. Like my thought is that some of this probably comes from the rise of prestige television, right? Back in the day, you would have like an A plot, or even in the current day, right? Like, Community does this and it's fine because it's, like a serialized show with like a light meta plot, right? You have your A plot and your B plot, and even if the A plot is like a long running thing, like this is a thing that happens a lot, like say Star Trek Deep Space Nine. The B plot could be this like a dumb bullshit like plot cul-de-sac, right? But it's a single episode long and it resolves by the end of the episode, and maybe it's annoying, but it's annoying for exactly one episode, and then like you get back to like the real business in the next episode. And so like the idea, like the old trope used to be that you would have a cliffhanger at the end of the season and it would be immediately resolved at the beginning of the next season. Everybody would be like, well, what the fuck? This wasn't actually a cliffhanger, right? Like it just like got solved immediately. And I feel like some of this is a reaction to that, right? Like it's like you can't just do that. You have to have it like mean something. And so you end up spending the whole season resolving this thing that should have been resolved. Like it'd still be bad, but it'd be better if it was resolved in the first episode of the season as opposed to like, taking the entire season to resolve it.
Yeah, I feel like, I can't think of too many like, maybe like Friends is like the simplest, straightforwardest sort of sitcom I've ever seen. Yes, Seinfeld. I'm trying to think of, but like what like plot hooks or like cliffhangers did Seinfeld have across seasons? I know there's one in Cheers, but I've never even seen Cheers.
Yeah.
Where in Cheers it's always this question of Sam and Diane, and I think there's a part where like Diane says that she's going to leave, but then in the first episode of the next season she just like comes straight back. Part of it is also that like the nature of our sort of viewing habits is pretty different in the modern era in like the way that binging sort of like works, right? We're not waiting week by week to see each new episode as they kind of come, right? We are watching all of these shows just back to back to back to back to back while we're playing Europa Universalis on the other screen, right? And so I think that's part of why some of this stuff feels cheap in hindsight, because you watch season 3, episode 26, and Diane walks out of the Cheers bar and she says, "So long." She closes the door. Then not 5 minutes later, season 4, episode 1 starts, and she walks into the room and goes, "Hi, everybody," right? Like that kind of thing. It sort of reminds me of...
I think it was always viewed as cheap, though, because like the thing my mom told me about was like back in the day, there's a show called Dallas, I believe it was. And one summer, the only thing anybody ever talked about was who shot JR. I don't know who JR is. I've never.
Oh, this is Who Shot Mr. Burns. This is
that's definitely what that's referencing, right? Like,
yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that at the end of the summer, when the show started back up again, it was like a very unsatisfying answer, and everybody was kind of mad about it, right? Like, and so like I think actually. I don't know if it seems cheaper now. I think it's just like easier. Like it's less cheap because you can just immediately resolve it, right? Like the problem is like, you have to wait like, 6 months to find out, oh, it was actually like a meaningless character that will be dealt with within an episode because, the story has to, the stasis has to be maintained generally, right? Like,
yeah, I feel like the concept that we're working around here is the concept of earning story moments, right? You as a viewer want the story to feel earned. There's actually a really great episode of Community. The episode of Community where they're all telling the scary stories, and Abed tells his scary story where every character makes the objectively correct sort of decision, which like they have a fully charged cell phone. When they hear about the escaped convict, they stand in the center of the room with knives back to back, and they turn on the emergency generator so the power can't get cut. It's like that kind of stuff. It's like that is actually a really great episode at explaining why like earning too much of your story development actually sort of sucks. You sort of need convenient and stupid things to happen sometimes because characters are themselves stupid. This story I actually think is mostly like that story is mostly about riffing on like people complaining about horror movies where people are too stupid, right? Like, why would she go back into the house after she ran outside from the killer, right? Like, I don't know. People make dumb decisions all the time. That always.
We've talked about this before as like the CinemaSins problem, right? Like,
yeah, exactly. Honestly, there's a similar example in Stranger Things, because, like I said, in this season 4 of Stranger Things, they're dealing with Vecna. Okay, so this being in the Upside Down is targeting people in like the material world. There's no gate between the two worlds. It's been sealed at the end of seasons 2 and 3. And so therefore there's no way for the Upside Down to like affect this world, except for Vecna can do this psychic shit between worlds. And the thing that he uses in order to do that, right, is he can like temporarily mind control sort of people, like show them illusions and things that aren't real when they're experiencing like extreme sort of like fear and distress. So what's happening is he's planting little visions in people's brains, and he's, you know, making somebody hear things that they don't want to hear about, like, you know, their abusive mom who has snide comments or something like that. And it submerges people into sort of this depressed and anxious mental state, and then he takes advantage of that state and kills the person, right? The kids all know this. They have deduced all of this information, okay? They have deduced all of this information, and they have similarly deduced that one of them, Max, the redhead that you probably don't know from the first season, Max is really depressed because her brother died at the end of the 3rd season, right? And she's really like depressed and weird about it.
Is this the scene where they play Running Up That Hill? Because I've seen that scene.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So the thing is, leading up to that scene, and I appreciate how meaningful that scene is, all the rest of it. Leading up to that scene, she keeps having visions literally of the guy that they're hunting. And then people are like, "Are you okay?" And she goes, "I'm fine." And it's like, what? You're in a detective story. You're supposed to be solving the murder, right? Like, these people are trying to help you with the thing. Why are you not communicating that you just had another one of the visions that you know he's putting in your brain to fuck with you, kind of thing? And at the same time, I'm frustrated about that from sort of like a storytelling level, right? But it is actually reasonable on a character level for someone who is going through it or whatever to not be forthcoming, and especially because she doesn't want to feel like a burden to the team of people who are there trying to save her life and all of the rest of it, kind of thing. The same thing also happens, by the way, because they keep letting her go off on her own. Earlier in that, which I would say is actually worse, because it's almost like a plot hole or something. Earlier in the same episode, they talk about how someone always needs to be with Max in case Vecna tries to attack her again, right? And then they keep letting her go off alone to places. She's like, "I just need to run into this trailer park." They're like, "Okay, take a minute." She goes into the trailer park. Immediately, vision of Vecna, right? They go to the cemetery where her dead brother is because she's going to read a really heartfelt letter to her dead brother. They all wait in the car while she's up on top of the hill. And I'm like, guys, please, I'm so sorry. You have to babysit this girl. You know that she's about to get fucking murdered. Anyway, I'm so sorry. I'm going off on a rant. But this is the same sort of I don't know why. I like Stranger Things. I think I was down on Stranger Things the last time I watched it, but this season 4 has been pretty rough to watch this time for these reasons.
Yeah, no, that all makes sense to me, right? That like this would be a problem. So, in terms of the plot cul-de-sac thing, is there a reason that like Chief Hopper needs to not be in town? Like, does this like enable some, like, you know, you like, this is like the kind of like, you know, cell phone in a horror movie story, like you were referencing with Abed, right? Like, you know, pre-cell phones, you didn't have to invent an excuse. Now you have to be like, you know, you have to have a character look at their phone and be like, "I don't have any signal here," right? Like, you know, like does Hopper need to be out of time for a reason?
My feeling is that they had to get the cast away from Hawkins, because otherwise the previous seasons of Stranger Things were all built on this sort of, maybe we would call it like ABCD storytelling, right? Which is to say you have an A plot, B plot, C plot, and D plot, but they are all solving the same core mystery, which is actually a really great way to structure your story, right? You have Joyce Byers and Chief Hopper who are investigating the disappearance of Will. At the same time, you have Will's friends who are investigating his disappearance. At the same time that you have Nancy and Jonathan Byers investigating his disappearance. At the same, I guess those are only 3 plot lines. I don't think there's a 4th one. At the same time that you have all the stuff with 11 sort of like happening, which is also tied to Will Byers. So you have essentially these government stooges or whatever who are also looking for Will and covering their own asses kind of like at the exact same time, right? all of those stories converge in the final episode of Stranger Things, where the Demogorgon comes out at the school, Elle banishes it, you know, like all of that kind of stuff, right? You have moments where Steve beats up the Demogorgon with the nailed baseball bat in Joyce Byers' house. You have Chief Hopper is like beating up the guys at the government facility. So you as the viewer are putting all of the different pieces together, and all of that stuff is kind of like converging to the same point. And eventually what you get is Elle kills the Demogorgon at the same time that Hopper rescues Will from the Upside Down, and they leave, and Will's safe, and sort of like all of the rest of it. The thing that I think happened at the end of the third season is they had just kind of done 3 seasons in a row where these kids are kind of plot savvy at this point, right? Like, you have now dealt with the Demogorgon and Will disappearing, the Demodogs. This is stupid. The second season is all about what we call the Demodogs. Actually, the mind flayer that infects Will is really what it's kind of about. But Demodogs are like the thing which are little Demogorgon dogs, basically. The third season is also about the mind flayer, as it takes over, it flays people's minds, takes over their brains, and then turns them into kind of flesh goop so that it could materialize itself in the material world. And he attacks this mall, and the mall is built by the Russians and all that kind of stuff. And so once you're getting to sort of Vecna, which is sweet and cool, and there's neat stuff sort of like happening, and it plays into sort of D&D and the satanic panic of the 80s and all that kind of stuff. Basically, there's one character named Eddie who listens to, you know, Metallica and is the DM for their Dungeons and Dragons group. And the idea is he is in the room when Vecna kills this first person who's like the head cheerleader. Her name is like Chrissy or whatever. And so the idea is that like it looks like Eddie fucking murdered a cheerleader in this like horrific sort of like satanic way or whatever. And if you just have all of the characters in Hawkins investigating it, my bet is that they're just kind of like too smart you have to kind of spread things around. So at the same time, you have a plot cul-de-sac with Joyce Byers and Hopper, where the sole goal is rescue Hopper from this Russian fucking prison. You also have this additional plot cul-de-sac of Will, Mike, Jonathan and Eleven are in California because Eleven has lost her powers and she needs to go to a secret ICBM bunker where she meets Dr. Brenner, who was her spooky dad from the first season, and he's gonna fuck her up and help her get her powers again before other government. That was also kind of a plot cul-de-sac, but it's a little bit better because at least you're learning about like the government program that made these fucking mind-controlled kids. So, yeah.
Okay.
I feel like the fundamental thing that's happening here from like a storytelling rules point, if I'm zooming out, and I want to zoom out to that sort of like next level up, is this idea that you need the way that I phrased this when we were talking about it before the cast was probably correct. This idea that you need things to be hard for your characters, which is actually a really good storytelling idea. This is something that comes from a number of different places. I heard it a lot when I was in school. The Pixar rules, there are a number of them. Actually, hold on. Let me find the Pixar rules because they sum it up in a really great way. Pixar rules of storytelling. They have 22 rules of storytelling. One of these is it's basically about how when a random thing happens to the characters. Oh, here it is. Coincidences to get characters into trouble are great. Coincidences to get them out of it are cheating, right? Which is a very core storytelling idea. If you are ever, in poker terms, on the river, and you don't know whether or not the characters are going to win or lose this hand, you always flip the card and they lose, right? Things should turn against your characters, and they have to fight hard in order to like make it back, right? But the problem with that rule applied to Hopper's storyline is halfway through the season, they actually get into good position where Hopper's had to do some stuff. He had to break his own foot in order to get out of the ankle chains and then run inextricably. I don't really understand how he was able to run. He was also barefoot in the Siberian snow. You'd think that caused frostbite, but I'm not going to think about it, right? He steals a snowmobile, gets into this like Russian town or whatever, right? And you think to yourself, okay, cool. Like they are about to rescue Hopper. The smuggler that they found in the United States is going to come to the US and they're going to get them out. But what ends up happening is the smuggler betrays them and all of them end up in the Siberian prison for the rest of the season. So something that could have been maybe half the season before Hopper kind of like gets back on board and we can reintegrate him into some of this sort of stuff in like a long-term sort of future kind of purpose. Now what you've done is, because you can't have coincidences that break in favor of the characters, you have just mired yourself even deeper in the quicksand of this plot cul-de-sac. So we're just never going to get anything useful out of that. And so there it is. That's the central thesis.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think, like, how do you fix this? It seems like the answer is you don't write it such that a coincidence has to break either way for the characters, right? Like you know,
yeah,
you write it such that, like, you know, Joyce is flying the plane, or somebody they know is flying the plane, right? Like, you know, and so you don't actually have that problem there, right? Like, but it feels like maybe they just didn't have anything to do with Hopper for the season and they wanted to keep him in.
It also, I wouldn't be surprised. There's definitely a thing of like, this happened in Game of Thrones as well, where when a television show gets so insanely huge that the actors within it end up kind of breaking out and becoming their own movie stars, which absolutely happened with these Stranger Things kids, right? And
like,
also
this
David Harbour
entire time
himself.
you've been telling me this, I've wanted to make a joke about it's just the origin story of Red Star, right? Like from Marvel.
Yeah, exactly, right? It is just, yeah, you can get Winona Ryder and David Harbour to film all of their scenes. They don't have to go to Indiana or wherever they film that shit, right? Like they can film against, on a soundstage somewhere in Los Angeles, and you can bang it out in 2.5 weeks, right? And move on, move on with your life so that he can go do his other sort of scheduling. Game of Thrones had a very similar sort of thing happen, specifically with Emilia Clarke and Jon Snow or whatever, because their storylines were kind of far flung off in the corners of Westeros. They could really tailor the filming schedules of everything that was happening in, the East with Daenerys and everything happening in the North with Jon Snow around those two actors' kind of like time. Whereas when you have to get David Harbour and Millie Bobby Brown into the same room at the same time, that's actually a pretty demanding thing from like a logistics perspective. But also that's weak sauce. That's weak shit. So like I would never accept that as sort of like an excuse to essentially write a bad story.
Yeah, it's an explanation, not an excuse, right? Like, it's an explanation, not a justification type of deal, right? Like it's,
yeah.
I
also think that there's something to do you know about this? Have you ever heard of but and therefore? Do you know? This is a very, very famous thing that the creators of South Park gave a talk. I think it was an NYU sort of like a guest lecture, and it was in like the year 2000 or 1999. So South Park was pretty big. They'd had the movie, right? But it wasn't like, it was kind of like an off the cuff thing. But one of the things they describe is how in their writer's room, they have this connecting agent between all of their scenes, which is either but or therefore. Right? You either want a scene to build on itself to something else. So some consequential thing has happened in the scene previous that determines the future of the next scene. That's therefore, right? Or you have something that acts against the purposes of the characters, and what the characters are sort of looking to do. That's but, right? So if you have a scene where, thinking in Titanic examples, right? Leonardo DiCaprio saves Jack Dawson, saves Rose from falling off the back of the ship. Therefore, he gets invited to dinner at the big swanky thing, and this is where he gets to sit down with everybody, and he gets to talk to Rose a little bit, right? But because Rose is a woman and not one of the men, she can't retire to Brandy, which allows Jack to secretly whisk Rose away to the place in steerage where all of the Irish people people are doing their dances, and she gets to do the swing thing that everybody remembers from that sort of thing. This is how but and therefore kind of connect scenes, ding 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 ding, ding like against sort of one another. I kind of feel like part of what happened here is there were too many buts and not enough therefores in a way, right? Because one of the things you can do with a therefore is just connect a positive scene to a positive sort of scene. And this is something that I feel like I see most commonly in like D&D terms, because you as the DM, you can kind of put a butt in someone's way. Like you can bridge a scene by creating a problem, right? Or you can let the characters kind of like build out of a scene pretty sort of naturally. And it seems as though if I were to describe the story of Hopper and Joyce Byers going to prison and getting stuck in this in Siberia in this gulag or whatever, it would be a story that is connected by quite a number of butts.
Yeah. Okay. That all makes sense to me. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if we've got much more to talk about this specific example. Do we want to move on to that?
I have an interesting side thing that I just want to mention here, which is about A/B storytelling. D&D, you can't do A/B storytelling very well, which is interesting. Because you don't want to split the party typically. Yeah. And it's funny because I have only paid attention. I have not done any of like these actual plays, right? So those of us in the chat who watch the actual play like Dimension 20 or Critical Role or any of those kinds of things, feel free to sort of like correct me. But it seems as though one of the things that happens quite commonly in a D&D game is that they split the party and you get to kind of cut back and forth, which is a pretty useful...
Yeah, I think you can actually do it. It's just harder to manage, right? The way this usually ends up going is, in the games that I've played where this happens, is like the DM will, has to consciously be like, all right, pause, right? With this line, we are cutting over to this other thing, right? And that's like, that requires a skilled DM to know like where a natural cut point is, when we can stop without letting too much time go by and not like, have half the party be bored. But you have to like cut pretty frequently between the two, and you probably don't want it to last more than like, the length of a session, right? Like, because
it's also the kind of thing where you want players to be able to reconvene as necessary. So this is, I think, a common way to do dungeons, for instance, is like you'll be moving through a dungeon or something, and you might have, or like you'll be investigating something. So one of the things I'm thinking about is when you guys were investigating in Heretic Heroes, you investigated the chapel. That included you guys splitting up to a certain extent, right? You went to the bottom, the basement. Oh my God, there are rats, right? You go up top into the office and you're learning all this stuff. And we were cutting between people pretty effortlessly around those sort of circumstances, but there was no combat there. And theoretically, if a combat had broken out, everybody is within shouting distance of one another and can kind of like reconvene. I feel like a version of things where you have people who are in, one group of people in Alaska, one group of people in California, and one group of people in Indiana is pretty untenable for sort of a D&D scenario outside of like alternate party situations, which people have toyed with for a long time. In a certain sense, I'm toying with it now. But I feel like once you get to that level, it's kind of different. You
could have a split party if like you are running the separate sessions for separate people, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
At a certain point. This is actually something I will shout out is friend of the cast, Chris, who ran the D&D, the 5e game that I played for in a long time. If one of us had to miss a session, he would invent a plot reason why that person was, like most of the time, would invent a plot reason why that character gets whisked away, and would write them a note, right? Like, so my character was a dwarf warlock. Usually, if I had to miss a session, it'd be something like Carcarius, my patron, summons you, right? And he steps like into a portal off screen, right? Chris writes me a note about like what's happening with Mason during that session, and then like conveniently deposits me back with the party at the next session, right? Like that.
Oh, that is actually really interesting. Because my point of view is almost the entirely opposite, right? I assume the character is there, but they do nothing of consequence, right? So the idea is, I even assume they act on initiative in combat in true sense, right? But every attack against them misses. They save against every spell. You know what I mean? It's just like they are a ghost. They are narratively unimportant, right? All of the important narrative is going to be happening sort of without everybody. Because I feel like this is a tough one for people to solve in general. Most novice DMs kind of trip over themselves to like over explain that. And in my experience, it's just easier to just move on, pretend they're gone, deal with it later. Right?
I would say it also depends on the nature of the campaign, right? Like we were doing kind of like a world spanning kind of like, accomplishing things. So it made sense for a like, the druid
nobody can
like
come in and whisk one of the prisoners and heretic heroes away because you guys are literally confined to within 30 feet of one another by the pentabands.
Yeah, like I would say like you could maybe do a thing where like, like if I had to miss a session, you could say like, the Abuna at the prison summons Lomareth, right? And like, Lomareth goes and has like a theological discussion during the session while the players go, while the rest of the party does something. Or like, the other way I've seen that particular problem handled is like, somebody else just pilots the character and they just do, mechanics in the fight because the DM has written the fight to expect all the characters.
What's funny is I definitely do write certain like mechanical ideas for certain players, right? So for instance, we skipped a session basically in Heretic Heroes because you were going to be out that week and we were about to go into a fight that I had not 100%, but I had quasi-designed for Lomareth's specific power set, right? Lomareth had demonstrated being able to solve an encounter this way. I'm reusing sort of that mechanic, so doing the fight without Lomareth doesn't feel like it's, like it's worth it kind of thing. Which is always sort of fair enough, but also at the same time, also
you can get away with that once in a while. You don't want like, to your game to rely on like, particular players to be there all the time.
I also, it's like a nice thing to like shout people out. I think people, when I am a character and I know I'm getting a neat plot hook in the middle of the game. Yeah. Obviously I want to be there for sort of that thing to kind of happen. Right. I would never give somebody the advice to design your dungeons to be completely agnostic of your characters.
Yeah. I mean, so there is, I think, a level of like that happens in Adventure Paths, right? It has to happen in Adventure Paths. Because,
that's interesting. That's true. Yeah.
And the Shadrach is simply unconscious for this one. He's always doing his shit. There is a level, like I think that works better for Captain Crunches, right? Like, there is a kind of level of like, where a gamer will enjoy, or like a mechanically inclined gamer will enjoy being like, this is the challenge. I have built my character in a skillful way, and thus it can overcome the challenge type of thing. That I think can kind of work that way. But I think it does help if it feels like you are things are like. I think this also works the other way too, right? Like this kind of famously happened in Nick's what was it? Not the Kingmaker campaign, where we had discovered basically, Gunslinger had an ability that like if they made like you could shoot somebody in the hand, and it was just like if you made the hit, they dropped the thing in their hand, and then like Stubby Nut Puncher, his current version was like a dwarf ninja. And so like I would shoot somebody in the hand, and then Stubby Nut Puncher would run over and grab the thing they were holding, and then you suddenly had an enemy that used a weapon that like it didn't have a weapon in their hand, right? And so we had one encounter where you come across 4 very violent, aggressive monks who you can't disarm, right? Like, and so it's like, okay, you've built this encounter, so we can't cheese it anymore, that kind of thing. But that feels good in a different way, where it's like, oh, you had to build this encounter for us because in a
certain sense, I actually think that Adventure Paths have a problem of like a sort of therefore problem. So for instance, when I built rebuilt Hell's Rebels, really, there are a lot of things about that game that are built into the character's backstory. So for instance, Warren was playing this half orc, maybe just full orc, I can't even remember. What was the class? He's like Blood Rager.
Right.
He was playing a half-orc Blood Rager who had ties to this sort of like black dragon. And there was like a whole set of arc that was about going and recruiting the Kulkari, I think they're called Kulkari Blackbloods is what they were, for your guys' like army to take Kintargo and all of this kind of stuff and fight on behalf of whatever. You can never do that stuff in an adventure path, but that's a very like therefore way to structure, a game where it's like, okay, I am going to return to my people. I have I have the birthright of the blood of Cyrexus in my veins, and I'm going to use that to take control of my orc tribe and bring them to bear militarily for our benefit. Right. You always want to like give people kind of that opportunity, but also,
all the therefores are static and very kind of, and generic, right? Like, it's like, the party kills the guy. Therefore the guy, like they get the key to the palace. Right. And like, you can't, do any of these things in like a creative way. Right. Like, or the GM is forced to improvise on the spot to deal with that rather than being able to like plan around it. So yeah, that makes sense to me.
And you can't really design open puzzles, right? Which is like this is something I've described on the podcast before. The idea that I will create problems without creating their solution, and just let you guys figure it out, right? That sometimes that can include it requires a certain level of sort of like simulationist understanding of the world, because a lot of the times you kind of have to let people be kind of creative and let things go when they are going to act in a sort of creative off the wall way to solve a problem kind of thing. But I just think that, one of the ways that people ought to design their dungeons is by saying, I'm going to create this set of circumstances, these sets of problems, and it's up to you to figure them out. The Pentabands are actually a great example of this. I knew that you guys were going to have to get out of the Pentabands somehow, but I didn't think to myself, well, if you heat the Pentabands up and then strike them really hard with a hammer, they will shut off, right? It was only that, okay, that's how you want to approach it? Interesting. Roll it, right? Kind of thing. And eventually that's when I was like, yes, this is a good, interesting sort of solution. And you can manipulate the physics of the world such that you can replicate it on mass.
Yeah, no, this is a piece of angry GM advice, which is slightly counter, which is like, you should have a couple of solutions that are like kind of apparent, and then let the players do what they want. But like, know that like 80 to 90% of the time they're going to, you come to a river, right? Like, like a broken down bridge. It's like, there's a river raging below. It's like, how do you get across the river? It's like, well, there are trees, right? Like, you could chop down and like get one across. You could ford the river or something. Or maybe, the fucking wizard has some way to like fly across with a rope and get people across that way, right? And like those first two are ones that you kind of foreshadow, or you kind of like show to the party, or like, highlight to the party. And the third one is the wizard says, oh, I got this jump spell, I can make that jump. And it's like, okay, sure, that works too, right? Like,
yeah, that's interesting. In the Pentagand's case, that's like if you guys had figured out the statue of Eurus in the chapel, which you didn't, right? Or, I mean, you kind of figured out what it did, but you didn't figure out how to take the spell casting from it. Because hypothetically speaking, you could have drawn the same power that the guards were using and then use that to control the Pentabands. But like all of that, I honestly wasn't even thinking about it in those terms either. I knew that the Pentabands were controlled by guards using this thing that they were getting from the statue of Eurus, right? This is, I guess, sort of the simulationist kind of thing, right? Which is like understanding how the world works in a greater way than the players do solves that problem sometimes for you. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I also think a version of this could have been like, we could have been in the Pentabands all the way to the end of the game, and it wouldn't have been the end of the world, right? Like, just within 30 feet. We were within 30 feet of each other for most of it anyway, right? Like,
yeah.
So the other piece of the other particular example that we had talked about, pretty sure that I want to talk about, is I guess it's like being over reliant on continuity, or I don't know the best way to express this, but the thing that has come up is that someone at Amazon apparently has said they can't figure out how to write the next James Bond thing because he pretty clearly dies at the end of the last Daniel Craig James Bond, right? And so there are people on Twitter just yelling, it's like, it's James Bond. Who the fuck cares? Have him show up and don't explain it, and it will be fine. And then somebody else says, this, because they are so concerned with this piece, like, with maintaining continuity, because Marvel has ruined everything essentially, right? They are going to canonize the 007 is a codename theory, because that is the only way you get out of this and maintain continuity in a sensible way. And this is bad because they should just kind of like leave that up in the air. And I think that's like this is a pretty kind of standard. This is kind of like a we like continuity. We like things that match up. We like recognizing this kind of stuff. And I think it's been taken too far with Marvel, and it's infected everything else. Does that make sense? Do you have any further thoughts?
Yeah, I want to like look up the theory because it's so codename theory is what it's called. Okay. It is I actually think this is going to be like an important, almost like Rosetta Stone for our modern age of storytelling. Like if I, in 20 years were to, God, where can I find the original one though?
I'm just saying, like,
fucking shoot myself. It's like all like screen caps to movies explaining the thing, but I want to find, because the original was a green text on 4chan. Actually, that's not even true. Apparently, now I'm looking at it, and it's not. It was originally in the 90s. Basically, the codename theory for James Bond is that there is there's a movie where the previous actors, James Bond in the cold open, he gets shot down in cold blood, right? Cut to title, you have your gun barrel sequence, right? And then you start on a completely new actor, and they're looking at their like license or something, and it says Agent 007, license to kill, James Bond, right? And the idea is that James Bond is a code name that is given to these MI7 agents, or MI6 or MI5, I don't even remember.
And James Bond is an assumed name, right? Like that.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I will say this was put in the grave definitively by Skyfall, which was a great movie. 2012, directed by Sam Mendes, lensed by perennial favorite Roger Deakins. Okay, fantastic fucking movie where they go to the Bond Manor in Scotland, where James visits the graves of his parents, and it says, Martha Bond, okay, whatever her name is, right? And the bad guy shows up with a helicopter and blows up his his manatorial estate, right? We might all think that's, I'm sure you could write your way out of that fucking corner.
Yeah,
right?
like he's the first one, and everybody else assumes the name for like posterity's sake. Or
exactly.
Like he happens to be named James Bond, and isn't that funny, right? Like or they always find somebody named James Bond to be James Bond, which would be very stupid, but funny.
But it's funny to me because if I were to go back 15 years and talk about the code name theory, right, 2010, right, I bet we would all say, actually, the codename theory is so cool, right? Because I feel like there was this sort of like glut of continuity back then where we wanted everything to connect to everything, right? This is the height of, I guess it's not the height of Marvel cinematic stuff. That would come a couple of years later, right?
This is kind of like, wouldn't it be neat, right? This is like fan theories gone wild. And when there wasn't an internet, and so like fan theory, or like the internet was in its infancy, and so these fan theories were kind of niche and fun, right? This is almost exactly like, people trying to write a universal timeline for The Legend of Zelda, right? And it's like, well, actually, if in Majora's Mask you split the timeline when, the Kid Link stays a kid, when Kid Link, or no, not Majora's Mask,
Legend Link to the Past.
No, it's the N64 one.
Ocarina of Time.
Yeah. If you split the timeline here, you could put these things here and these things here. It's like, wouldn't this be neat? It's like, oh, that is a neat idea, right? Like, isn't that cool? And then they went and canonized it, which is because like, oh, okay, I guess
they canonized it.
Yeah, they canonized it.
No way.
Yeah.
When?
They like released a book with like the split timeline is like a canon thing at some point in like I think the tens.
Yeah,
That's wild. Why don't you say the thing you were going to say while I go figure out when they canonized the split timeline?
In a certain sense, this reminds me of the plot pedestal, right? So we talked about how plot holes are when, you know, there are these sort of problems where plot is disrespecting itself, where, you know, a character says a thing, they explain a rule of the universe in a straightforward way, and it is clearly transmitted what the rule of that universe is, and later on, that rule of the universe is broken, or there is some papering over of a decision that gets made with incomplete information that turns out to be perfect information. Lots of different, you know, things that kind of amount to plot holes. But plot holes essentially describe when you don't hold... You kind of hold pacing and tone and action and spectacle above the importance of coherent plot logic, right? A plot pedestal is the opposite of this. This is where having coherent plot logic actually fucking destroys your entire movie, right? Because your movie is bending over backwards to explain itself without justifying the cool action or the fun scenes or any of that kind of stuff. And plot cul-de-sacs I would describe in a very as a very good version of this. So for instance, a plot pedestal that I would we talked about a couple of different plot pedestals as kind of emblematic, but one of them that I would think of is Men in Black to Men in Black 2. Do you remember Men in Black 2?
What about it in particular? Like the
end of Men in Black 1 is Tommy Lee Jones has retired from the Men in Black. Yeah,
and there's that woman that they bring in, and then they just kind of like kill her off screen, and then
in Men in Black 2, she is completely off screened, and the whole first half of the movie is dedicated to bringing Tommy Lee Jones's character back, which is just like the importance of the dynamic between Agent K and Agent J is so important to the filmmakers, right, that they are willing to completely upend their own story for the sake of maintaining the continuity of where is Agent K and let's justify getting him back. This is actually maybe a good example of just what a plot cul-de-sac in general is. It's quite a lot like what's happening with Hopper. It's actually weirdly better than what's happening with Hopper because at least the plot of Men in Black 2 is that there is a crazy case that Agent K solved, and because he retired, they don't have access to it, so they have to unretire him in order to like open up the cold case kind of thing, which is at least a better example than just he is in the Russian prison and we have to break him out, right? But either way, this is just the importance of the continuity of we left Hopper in a Russian prison or we erased Agent K's memory becomes so important that it completely warps both of those stories entirely around them.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Anyway, you were looking up a thing.
Yeah. So, the Zelda split timeline was canonized in 2011 in Hyrule Historia and was apparently confirmed before that in 2007 by a producer. So,
gross.
Yeah.
I think that's dumb, but whatever.
I agree.
It's funny because I think of myself as being a kind of continuity person. I could explain to you the continuity of all of these DC comics and everything else and the betrayal that Brand New Day, this would be a big one, right? Spider-Man One More Day, Spider-Man Brand New Day kind of like had to the nature of the timeline by unmarrying. God, it's so fucking stupid. The stupidest fucking story I've ever heard in my life. Okay. And I just at this point I am like entirely over it. Continuity porn is neat and I like it and I'm gonna go, ooh, that's cool, right? And there are lots of great examples where certain stories are slavishly faithful to their own continuity and create beautiful works of art. Frankly, my favorite stories are like that, like Venture Brothers or whatever. But at this point, I just don't fucking care, right? I think jerking off over how cool our continuity and this thing ties into that thing and it pulls from whatever is just like super hollow. You know what's funny? I bet you could show me an inflection point and it would be The Force Awakens. I think that's what I would say. Maybe it would be after The Force Awakens, because I obviously like The Last Jedi, right?
No, I don't think Star Wars, like the sequel trilogy's problem is its devotion to continuity, right? Like I think that's Solo's problem. Like
yeah, that's true. That's fair.
Like I think there's a thing here where like it's stuff that is connected, but like not telling a single story, right? Like if you're telling different stories, you don't need to be as devoted to it, and you don't need to explain it. I think that's like this is the Bond problem, right? Like you can like have James Bond appear after he's apparently died, right? And just not explain it, and it's fine, right? Because answering these questions is sometimes satisfying, but it doesn't have to be, right? Like, you don't have to explain why, why Gal Gadot is in the submarine at the end of Fast 10 or whatever, Fast X or whatever we saw, right? Like,
oh my God, I had forgotten about that. Yeah, I forgot they brought her back at the end of Fast 10. I haven't watched Fast 10 since I saw it in theaters.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember this, but like when she died, I said to you, when does she come back? Because she clearly didn't actually die, and you like didn't say anything, and then she only shows back up at the end of Fast.
You know what's funny? Actually, this is hilarious to me. Fast and the Furious is a great example of this, right? Because even though it does jerk itself off over its own sort of like continuity, and in a kind of fan servicey sort of like way, because the story is like so fucking wild. it has this like good natured way. Like F9 is the best example of this. F9 includes a ridiculous number of callbacks to previous. They go back to they team up with the Tokyo Drift team, right? Which is amazing. Middle-aged fucking Lil Bow Wow with his like receding hairline and like deeply recessed eyes, and you're like, oh my God, when I saw this kid last, he was a 16-year-old kid, and now he's 40, right? Like, and I was cheering for that stuff in the theater, right? But the reason why is because it is all in service to sort of that underlining theme of family. This like beating heart of that story is, at the end of the day, the found family and camaraderie of the Fast and Furious crew. So bringing the Tokyo Drift team to the family barbecue at the end of F9, where they get to see Han, who they watched die in a fiery car crash in Tokyo, right? And give him a big hug. That's like a really gratifying piece of continuity that like fits in with sort of like the lore and stuff like that. Or, I'm sorry, not the lore, the themes and stuff like that. It's when continuity is dedicated kind of solely to its own like lore and internal logic that I think it really kind of loses steam and loses out on itself.
I also think it helps that the Fast and the Furious movies don't take themselves super seriously, right?
Yes, that's true.
Right, like if this was like, I don't fucking know what's like if this was Game of Thrones, maybe, right? Like it wouldn't work the same way, right? Like the fact
if
that
this was this.
The
Sopranos is what I was going to say, right? Yeah.
Yeah. If you had like if you had a spin-off Soprano show that followed, I don't know, AJ, right? Like, and, fucking
the worst thing in existence,
adult AJ and like you have like fucking Polly Walnuts, like, make a cameo or whatever, or, turns out that fucking, Chrissy survived and like crawled to safety and like wakes up in a hospital and shows up in a later episode and be like, this is fucking stupid. I hate this, right? But like,
or that like Adriana's actually been living in witness protection this entire time because Silvio couldn't bring himself to kill her or something. You would all just be like, God fucking damn it, that's so fucking stupid. I absolutely think that's the case. There is something about the sort of genre that Fast and Furious is playing in, because it understands how fucking stupid it is. it can kind of get away with like being even stupider in response.
Yeah, or like I don't know, like I think like the very dumbest chin nod of this is like, you know, there was a gas leak at Greendale in like season 4 or whatever, right? Like, you know, which is which, you know, is is kind of a, you know, it's like a it's an in joke, but because it's a comedy series, no one cares, right? Like, you know, yeah. I don't know.
I was going to take this somewhere else, but we got fast-tracked or sidetracked on Fast and Furious, and I don't remember where I was going to go with it. Oh, there was another movie that I was actually thinking that really broke me on this, which is Spider-Man No Way Home. What was the third one called? Was it No Way Home?
The one with all the Spider-Men?
Yes, because I hated that movie so much. And it was because of this feeling of it is like shitting on kind of the legacy, right? Like part of what really bothered me about it was in Spider-Man 2, right? Like the tragedy of Doc Ock is played very sort of seriously and straightforwardly. And the fact that they just solved that with Tony Stark's nanobots bummed me out. Because like it just undermined, like this is where it doesn't feel like it's doing a continuity nod to a thing that I love. It feels like it's hollowing out the foundations of the thing I love. The other thing I complained about in that movie is that 3 Peter Parkers got together in a high school chemistry lab and developed an antidote to the Oz drug or whatever. And listen, I think Peter Parker is a smart kid. He is obviously very, very intelligent and he's a nerd and all of this kind of stuff is important, but there's just no version of things where I want to believe, right? And I think the word want is actually pretty operative there, right? Where I want to believe that Peter Parker had the capability to solve this in a high school classroom if he just sat down and thought about it sort of like hard enough. Do you know what I mean? And so that is maybe where I feel like continuity getting up its own ass really, really reached its apex for me. Which, you know, yeah.
Would it have been better if like the thing here was like, it was like a kind of a what if scenario, and like you knew that it was always kind of temporary, right? Like what if we pulled like Doc Ock from before he went crazy and just like had him for that instead of Tony fixing him, it's just kind of like him right before it, like it goes nuts and he's just like using the arms, which I know doesn't quite work with the continuity that we have, but like, you know, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, maybe there's something about it feeling like it's kind of pissing on the original.
It cheapens, it cheapens
exactly.
the story, yeah.
In the same sort of way that The Force Awakens sort of does it in by just setting up the exact same status quo and kind of running back. You know, everybody says this, right? It's just A New Hope over again. Well, it's like, yeah, but also it like undoes sort of the work that went into it. It made the apex of the previous story sort of not matter, right?
It doesn't show us Star Wars post Return of the Jedi in a positive light. It's not like, you know, things have been going well for a while and this is like a thing that has it just like starts you at square one. It's like, oh, everything's shitty again, and we're not going to explain what happened in the meantime.
Yeah, and also there's no, and going back to like buts and there's no therefore, right? One of the things that actually works quite well about the prequels in terms of fitting into the continuity really straightforwardly, right, outside of whatever midichlorians, people, that's a pretty good example I think of continuity that people would get mad at or whatever, is that it is showing a clear state of affairs, right, that is setting up a thing that we already understand. We understand Darth Vader is a bad guy. He is the dragon that the Emperor uses to keep, you know, his authoritarian regime in line. That's who we understand, right? And we watch this kid who enters training a little bit too late, and you know, he's been a slave and he's ripped from his mother in a way that's not always super great. And the guy who did it dies, you know, and he was given to this young kid to become to, whatever, become a thing. And then he ends up falling in love with a woman, but attachment is really bad. Jedi aren't allowed to do that. His sort of passion and his love, these things have to be dampened, right? His mentor is not doing a great job at keeping a lid on those sorts of things. And then someone takes advantage of the fear and anxiety that comes with feeling like my loved one is about to, is about to die or whatever else. And he runs that gamut all the way through to just turning on everything that he once believed in out of fear and hopelessness and a million other fucking stupid emotions, right? There's nothing about that undermines or there's no version of that removes what would later come in the 4, 5, and 6 for how we understand Luke and Vader and Leia and all of the rest of that, right? All of these things are sort of supportive rather than, deconstructive is maybe the opposite of supportive in this sense. And I feel like The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and this is also me as a Last Jedi fan, right? The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker don't do any of these things, which is bad, right? It doesn't sort of honor that sort of legacy that comes off of, 6. It just kind of, I don't know, does a lot of stupid stuff. Somehow Palpatine returned, okay? The stupidest, maybe the best possible version of stupid continuity shit that we would all just fucking hate, right?
Yeah.
Talk about unearned.
Yeah. That makes, totally unearned, announced in Fortnite, right? And
announced in Fortnite. Oh, I forgot about that. A bunch of Homer Simpsons and buff Peter Griffins doing the floss to, dance.
Yeah.
What does it say about us that we've never done a Fortnite episode?
That we're over 12? I don't know. No, that's unfair to, I don't know. I have played a little bit of Fortnite just to kind of see what it is, and part of the thing for me that always turned me off of it is part of the the joke is you shoot at somebody and they turn into a house, right? The construction mechanics, which are kind of ostensibly there because it's built off of the original Fortnite, right? Which is kind of like a wave survival game. It turned me off because I don't want to get good at quick building things as a defensive strategy, right? And also just I don't know, it had the PUBG kind of hit that simulationist-y part of it, right? It's oh, I'm going to crawl through the grass for 20 minutes and take a shot, right? We're going to jump on a boat and hang out in the water and then assault the land at the very last minute and try and catch people by surprise, right?
Boat strats,
yeah.
Boat strats, yeah.
Right, but that's got the tactical simulationist edge. Whereas,
what was the place we dropped all of the time? We were always school. We would always drop at the school.
School was when we
or the hospital also.
Yeah, that's when we wanted to drop hot, right? There's a whole thing here I think about iteration through playing these games where you go from doing the thing that will optimally get you the best placing to the thing that is more fun, which is fighting things out.
Yep.
But just to complete the thought, right? Apex kind of hits the arcadey version of this is where it's people are powered up. They've got special hero powers. You're more naturally driven to conflict. And at that point, you're playing a you're playing a kind of more action focused game. And that's a different experience that I like. And Fortnite has I think the action focus of Apex, but without the interesting powers, and doesn't have the kind of depth of crawling through the bushes that PUBG did. And so it kind of hit that unhappy middle for me personally. Which is why I never really attached. Have you played Fortnite at all?
I've never even loaded it up. I wanted to play the actual previous version. I've talked about this before, I think, where there's a part of me that wants to, because I know it's still in the game. I think it's now called like Save the World or something like that, right? Like it's like this other game mode that nobody touches where you're doing the wave-based thing. But like the pitch of I'm going to go to, during the night, I'm going to hunker down and there are waves of zombies and I'm going to shoot them all and they're going to walk through my traps and stuff like that. Okay, that's cool, right? And then during the day you go out, you farm a bunch of resources to just go, like, that's a great loop. I'm on board for that kind of thing. So I've never done that.
Are you just a gaming contrarian? You're also like yeah, I love StarCraft 2. The campaign's great, which is like not why people play StarCraft 2.
The campaign is great, though.
I
think part of it is
not.
that, like, I have a whole thing, actually, that I've wanted to talk about for a long time, which is the, like, nature of male-centered romance, which is not something... I don't think men like romance as a genre, but I deeply do. I love romance. I think romance is incredibly fun and engaging, right? And the whole core of StarCraft 2 is the romance between Kerrigan and Rayner, and so if you can't buy into that, you won't get into it. But it's so tailor-made for me because I love romance stories, right? It's like which is the crazy part, right? When you think of romance, you think of whatever, Pride and Prejudice or something like that. Titanic, yeah. And Titanic is not for guys. Titanic, well, I mean, I guess, I don't know, in the same way that anything is for anything, right? But I think of Titanic as specifically a story for women, right? The protagonist is a woman, it's Rose. She is both the POV character and the character who changes and the character whose growth affects the stage, like just any way you slice that narrative. Yeah, exactly. Any way you slice that, right? The romantic object is Jack Dawson. I happen to particularly like the fantasy of being the Jack Dawson two-way Rose, right? But I just don't think other guys have that same inclination and therefore don't.
They're not as popular,
engage
certainly. Like I wonder, like, can I think of a like male focused, like, basically a romance for men, and I don't know. It feels like most men are drawn to kind of the heroic story. Like, it's like it gets the girl as like a secondary thing, right?
Yeah,
like,
I think the thing that happened, if I look at the culture broadly, romance got sort of subsumed into all genres. And you always have a romantic subplot and a romantic lead, or like a romantic, there's a word for this that's like, so love interest, right? You always have a love interest in these stories. And I actually think that if you were probably to like poll men, I think a lot of them would probably say like Tony Stark and Pepper Potts would be like their favorite version of this. But it's probably their favorite version of this because it is very specifically like, after the first movie, Tony and Pepper don't have a ton of stuff. Like, they're ostensibly main characters with things going like back and forth, but like there's just like not all that much in there. And I think this is why romance has essentially kind of fallen out of a lot of movies in like the latter day version of things. It feels like it's honestly something that I thought about when I watched Superman, how straightforward the romance was between Superman and like Lois Lane, and it was just because I felt like I hadn't seen romance in a movie in a long time because it was just kind of like written out.
Yeah, what like the only way
I would maybe say like, because like romance subplots matter for like BioWare RPGs. Like, you would be able to say, who did you romance in Mass Effect? Everybody has an answer, right? Like,
but it's almost entirely divorced from the actual plot because it's optional, right? Like, it's like who you romance is like its own storyline, but like, it doesn't really bear on anything else, right? Like it kind of.
And I also think that, we've talked about this in the past. I also think that version of sort of like RPG has gone away, right? It's kind of gone by the wayside, and there's not as many people who are sort of like playing in that vein. Maybe Baldur's Gate 3, you could get people to do the similar thing. I famously complained about the romance of Baldur's Gate 3 because, frankly, I didn't want to fuck any of them, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I guess that's part of it, right? It's like they make these things optional because not everybody wants to engage in that system, right? Like, and you can, like, it would be weird to have a Dungeons and Dragons game where romance is mandatory, right? Like, like you could have a game where romance is mandatory, but you put that on, like, it's like a dating sim, right? Like you put that on the box and you make it the draw, rather than like,
man, we've never talked about this in like a D&D term, like when romance. I've done romance in a lot of D&D games, but it's never. I don't know. It's never come up in my games. Was there romance in Hell's Rebels? My feeling is no, right? I can't remember anything.
No, or none that any of us, like, I think Beauregard had, like, maybe plans to, like, do a purely instrumental marriage to try and, like, that was one of his, like, schemes, was to, like, become, like, a real, a real, what's the word I'm looking for? Become a real aristocrat by like marrying rich, right? Because he's like a bastard son, right? But like that was like purely instrumental. That wasn't like about romance, right? Like,
yeah, I did a romance. I famously love when I play in games. I love romance, but I like. In Frank's game in Strixhaven, it's Liliana Vess, who, because I know the story of magic, I know that Liliana, at the end of the War of the Spark, when Gideon sacrifices himself to protect her, and then she uses her power to strip Nicol of his, whatever, like, she goes off and becomes a professor at Strixhaven, is kind of like her denouement. She's like not really in the story kind of like anymore. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to get so hot for teacher, right? My character's thing is I want to fuck Professor Onyx, right? Like, and that's not like a real romance in a real sort of sense. It's just kind of like a self-motivated, right? Like, I am going to relentlessly pursue this like woman, this thing. But in Mark's game in college, I had a very deep romance with a femme fatale camera named Oksana Fyodora, who was the daughter of one of our long-running villains, and kind of had that Catwoman thing of like, sometimes she was in our favor, sometimes she like fucked with us or whatever. But part of what, part of my character's thing is I wanted to fuck Oksana Fyodora, and we did, right? But I don't know, romance is not a thing that pops up in every D&D game, so
I think part of that is it's just kind of like an uncomfortable thing to do at the table in a lot of cases, right? Like, you have to like get the person playing the other character, whether it's another player or the DM, to like engage in like romantic banter with you in front of 4 other people, right? Like, that's just like a hard thing to pull off in a way that like if you're doing it for an audience, like a Critical Role, it makes sense because like they're mostly making story content. But like,
yeah, and theoretically I could see a version of things where you make a romance between 2 PCs, right? Like a version of like, I don't even know what this would look like. Like, me and Tracy are in a game together, and our characters are flirty or something like that, and there's like a romance subplot just between us, in the same way that you would have 2 characters who have any other kind of subplot, right? Like Atticus and fucking Colbjorn are brothers, right. That kind of subplot, that kind of thing, right? You 2 good flirting character in front of me. That's a great idea. Listen, next time we play in a game together, okay, I'll play the girl, okay, you can romance me, it'll be very cute, Mega, okay?
Is this Rachel? Is this Rachel's Fujoshi arc?
Anyway, I don't know. We're probably past our limit. Do you want to talk about weeks?
Yeah. So, how was your week?
My week was dominated by Europa Universalis 5. My Castile run is going quite well. I have allied with France. Everybody complains when playing Castile about France because France moves in and kills Aragon before. So Castile is sort of Western Spain. Aragon is Eastern Spain. So sort of Madrid and Barcelona, right? And in the 1400s, there's something called the Iberian Wedding, which I think it's like the 1450s or something, which is when the king of Castile and the Queen of Aragon get married. They unite the country into Spain. In EU4, because it began in 1444, you basically start Spain and you immediately get the Iberian wedding and you just make Spain. Like you start as Castile, but you make sort of Spain. Because you start in 1337 in EU5, you have 100 years before the Iberian wedding is going to come around. And France is just to the north of you, and Aragon is going to get shit stomped by France if you don't do anything. My solution to this has been pucker up. I have been kissing France's butt all fucking game, helping them out in all of their wars, you know, all of this other sort of stuff. And I have stolen a bunch of Aragon's land, and then I ejected it into sort of a vassal of mine. So because you kind of don't have a great way to absorb a ton of territory and then integrate it, the real way that I'm doing that right now is to vassalize very hard, and then you annex your vassal, which takes longer, but it's better and kind of more efficient to kind of like do it all at once. Though France has just recently fucked me, because in our last war against Aragon, which they were leading and I was not, they took a piece of Aragon for themselves, and I'm like, you bastards. But also they did give me Majorca, so I do have some more Aragon to myself. I've also eaten quite a lot of Portugal, because Portugal is just really easy to fuck on in sort of Castile. But the most important thing is we're getting up to my favorite part, which is the Age of Exploration. And I have colonized the Azores and the Canary Islands, which are typically very important in Europa Universalis because they are the launching points. Basically, you can't colonize unless you're close to a thing. And so by colonizing the Azores, I'm going to be able to be closer to the New World than anybody else. And I've also done a bunch of stuff to like maximize the chances that I discover the New World advance and all of these other sorts of things. So I don't know. There we go. We're playing Europa Universalis. I'm frustrated by how hard it is in places, which isn't to say like difficult, but just like illegible. There are times where I walk in with better troops and a better general and a better whatever, and I get fucking shit stomped. And I'm like, why? What happened here? And I think there's an answer. I think if I were to learn all of these esoteric mechanics, I would get there. But I can't even find good advice on it because the game just kind of came out. Normally what you could do with the Europa Universalis 4 is you could look up, you know, why did my pikemen plus cannons not work? And they're going to go, oh, well, you didn't know, but in 1450, you know, French cavaliers come into existence and they specifically counter pikemen and have a thing where they can ignore pikemen frontage. And you're like, what's frontage? And you're like, you know, you can learn all this stuff, but I have no opportunity to do that because the game just came out, which is maybe the point, but it's very frustrating.
Yep. That makes perfect sense to me. I have not played EU5 since like launch, just because I've been playing Arc Raiders pretty continuously. How many hours do I have? I have like at least... I have 58.9 hours in Arc Raiders, so it's been like...
Well, that's good. You know, at least you are ahead of friend of the cast, Sarian, who got Arc Raiders on like Wednesday and by Friday had 24 hours in game.
Yeah.
And I think he's in game
right now.
Yeah, exactly. Listen, we could go do trios, all right? Yeah. After the cast. I do want to shout out to my friends Sarian and Xavier, who did play trios with me, and we had the stupidest deaths of all time, where we got extremely kitted out to go do a very high profile key run where we go to the very top of this big tower, and then we got up to the tower and we started sliding down a ladder, but the ladder, you're supposed to jump off of it, and so we all fell off the bottom of the ladder and died, and it was pretty fucking stupid, but hey. I also found that when we were playing in trios, we were able to befriend people more often.
Really? Okay, that's good. Yeah, I think.
I mean, we also got deeply betrayed, so there's that. Part of it is that Xavier's a little bit like Monic in the sense that he just like shoots at people.
Hey, I will grant you that Monic's like that, but you are also like that, right? Like,
you know what? That's true. Okay, that's fair.
You know, I remember lining up, and be like, "Oh, there's a guy. I'm going to take a. Should I shoot? Bang!" Right? Like, you know.
That is me. That is actually kind of a lot like, should I take a shot? Bang, bang. Yeah, that's very real. It was funny. We actually fought in another round. We were on free loadouts. And we came across some people, and we were just kind of like, me and Sari, I guess, came across them first, and we were using Prox Chat, and I just kind of said, "Hey, we're trying to find the thing. We had a crate. We were trying to find the field crate." And he was like, "I don't know where it is." We were like, "Okay." And then he walks kind of like behind us, and Xavier's there, and Xavier just starts shooting this guy. And so we were like, "Oh shit!" And so we ended up starting fighting them. Me and Sarian both go down, and then Xavier like comes out of the woodwork at the end of it and kills both of the people who had gunned down me and because, like I said, we were in free fucking loadouts. It was terrible, and the guy was so mad. I've never heard somebody mauled so fucking hard. He was like, "Go fuck yourselves," in Prox Chat as he was like on the ground. And we were like, "You mad, brother?" They had a lot of good stuff is why he was mad.
Oh man, I was playing a game and I was just like running through an area and like this guy is like shooting at an arc. It's like, "Oh, I'll help." I shoot the thing down and he pops around and starts shooting me. And as he's executing me, he says, "Oh, I guess the waiter got weighted." And I have never been more angry for like that split second than I have ever been in my life.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
but I have played enough that I am essentially like, I am comfortable with losing things, I guess is the right way to put it, right? Like I have a fully upgraded hull cracker, which is like the arc only grenade launcher, right? And I like mostly soloed a Rocketeer on my own. I'm like, okay, this is great, right? And it's like, I am okay with dying if I have to, or if it happens. So basically earlier today, there was the Hidden Bunker event was on at Spaceport, and people were being very friendly, but like, I guess people have enough stuff, myself included, that like, there is outside of the actual bunker entrance, there's always like a Bastion and a Bombardier. And so I was like bringing wolf pack grenades that I had just collected and like bringing them into the game. And I was not the only one. We were just like fucking murder housing these big bots, and like everybody like running and grab parts. Like, okay, like this is easy now, right? And everybody was being friendly. I think what it was is that the event popped, and one of the trials this week is to get downloaded data at the bunker, and so everybody's just like, we don't want to fight. I don't care about the loot. I just want to maximize my my trial score. So we'll all run in. We'll download the data. It'll be great. And even like to the point where like some dude accidentally like killed himself on the Bastion, and like three of us like took bandages and just like escorted him to the elevator and kept him stabilized in solo so he could like go down the elevator. Right? Like, it was people are generally pretty good hearted in the game, especially in solos, right? Like,
it's funny. There was another game where we got downed. We all got owned because Xavier started taking shots at a fucking Rocketeer, and then another team showed up and they killed us or whatever. And then we're all crawling on our knees to like these guys, and I started saying, "Hey, you know what would really show me is if you brought me up, is if you rest me." And I was thinking about like that moment as just a funny thing that you can do in Arc Raiders. You can res somebody and then just kill them again if you really wanted to, which is obviously like a waste of resources and all of the rest of that. But there's always the chance. Okay, you can always sort of hope, I guess.
There was this one moment where, so when they announced they were like having it, like trying to prioritize duos against duos, because they hadn't been doing that for a while, and playing duos in the trios game is kind of miserable.
Yeah, that sounds awful.
Like when I was doing this with Monarch, we would just kind of go with like cheap loot because it's like if we get into a fight, we're fucking losing, right? Like, but we're in this duos queue and we see people on the roof, and it's like, let's take shots. It's like, okay, I guess we're taking shots, and bullet shots, not boost, but so we take shots at them.
Lil Jon starts playing in the background?
Yeah.
Shots.
So we shoot at them and we get into like this long range firefight, and eventually they back off. We're like, let's chase them. So Monarch puts a zip line across to the roof that they're on, and we follow them, right? We can't find them. We turn around. Turns out they have, in the meantime, jumped down and zip lined over to the roof that we were on, right? And so we get to the exact opposite fight. We go back across to fight them. And granted, this is the thing that we started. Monik gets knocked down and like falls down an elevator shaft, and a totally different team at the bottom reses him, right? And it's like, I managed to take out the team at the top. I was like, oh yeah, those guys were dicks, right? Like, thanks for helping us.
That's amazing. Yeah. Arc Raiders, what a title. What a game. Yeah,
what a game. Oh man. And it's still going strong. Like they dropped the new map, which is like mostly indoors, so it's like a lot different. It's super fun. It's I might be kind of like nearing the end of my kind of obsessive playing period, just because I've got most of the things that I like want to do, and like the kind of loop isn't quite there as much. Like it'll probably start up again tomorrow when the trials run over and I can like, do more things, like have more objectives to push towards. But it's this weird thing where it's like, okay, I've got enough stuff that I feel comfortable risking good gear on this run type of deal.
It's funny. I feel like I went a different way, where just doing free loadout econ runs has been very fun and gratifying, right? Like that was something that we me, Saren, and Xavier did, because like the risking nothing part of that feels pretty good. And the fact that it really reinforces the easy come, easy go nature of everything, right? Like there was a moment where my stash was completely full of stuff, and I was like, you know what? I'll just kit myself out for this thing. Instead of taking the free loadout, I like upgraded a Pharaoh and a Stitcher and, like a level 1, whatever, like looting apparatus and some bandages and stuff like that. I was just like, what's the point of doing, if I do a free loadout run, I'm going to have to delete or sell a bunch of things anyway. I might as well just kind of like kit myself out. And that really like clicked a thing in my brain to just kind of be like, oh, part of what the game is doing is giving you a million things to bring back to the base, so that, the tight base inventory constrains your ability to just kind of keep doing these free econ runs, like you can't build up a huge stockpile. At a certain point, you do 2 of them and your thing is full, and you just might as well you can play with the stuff that you got.
Good stuff. Yeah. No, like that's actually where like I got to that point a little bit earlier than you. It's like I can create, pretty regularly craft like tier 2 augments, right? So it's like I can just do that and run out with like my stuff and be confident that I'll be able to like rebuild that basically immediately. And the tier 2 augments also give you enough slots to like the thing I started to find frustrating about the free tier econ was, besides like, the kind of like space, is that the space in the pack is like so small that's like you loot 2 buildings and you're done. It's like, what am I doing here, right? So and so like I'm not at the point, like I'm at the point where I'm running like a tier 3 augment because I have spares of them just from quest rewards. It's like, if I lose this one, that's not the end of the world, right? Like, I'm not running all my best weapons quite yet, but like, that is like a thing that's gonna be very hard for me to be like, I found a second Tempest and I've been upgrading it. And maybe if I get that one all the way upgraded, I'll feel fine about like bringing one in, because then I'll have 2. And if I lose one, I'll always have a second one type of deal. But I have successfully put myself up the loot tree enough that like I'm comfortable with like potentially losing blues. I'm a little bit less confident about losing pinks, right? Like when I bring the wolf packs in, I put them in my safe pocket, and then when I want to use it, I switch it over to the right pocket. And I've been very nervous about my Hellcracker, but I'm also at the point where I need these things, right? Like I have opened so many fucking car hoods looking for a motor, and I haven't been able to find one. And that's like the last thing I need to upgrade my refiner, which lets me, craft power sticks, which will let me craft heavy shields, which will make me happy, right? Like I am, but it has been, it's, in one of our shared chats, I took a picture of a real life electrical, like I was driving and I stopped at a light and I looked around and I see an electrical box and I snap a picture and I send it to a shared chat. It's, tag you and
breach and search.
Yeah. Breach and search. Right. Like,
I love that feeling.
Yeah.
I feel like I crave that feeling out of games, and it's hard to find. It's funny because I played a bunch of Legion Remix today. I did a little bit of Mythic Plus, which was pretty funny. because we haven't done all that much Mythic Plus this season because friend of the cast L's computer is like super fucked and can't run WoW and all this other sort of stuff. And I've been healing on Gorash. I don't think of myself as all that like good a healer in all of the rest of it, but I'm trying to like upgrade for the purposes of raid and stuff like that. You know, we're on Doug Dimmadome, Dimensius. I was doing some of that stuff and I got 2600 rating, which is mythic tier raid. It's the thing that gives you like the special flourish on all of the armor. You know, they have like the item that puts VFX on all of the armor. If you get gladiator in PvP or you clear the mythic raid, you get cutting edge, or you get 2600 rating in mythic plus, you get that thing. And I just kind of fell ass backwards into it on this character who was not my main, who was not Bairn, and it felt fine. And I was a little bit like, am I really good at, like, I guess I'm really good at this game or something. You know what I mean? Like it was just kind of wild that there are entire seasons where we were like pushing to get to 2600, and this season on a fucking alt, which granted is more geared than my main and all of the rest of it. I have already picked up the thing. I started soloing tier 11 delves because I was just kind of like looking for gilded crests. And I was like, I wonder if I can solo a tier 11 delve, and it's hard. It's not free. I have to use things well and all of the rest of that. In one of them I did crash out because I just kind of kept dying to what I would consider to be stupid bullshit, but fucking, you know, whatever, fair enough, it got me kind of thing. But in a weird way, I kind of crave that, so
yeah,
I don't know.
That's interesting. I've had like tier 11 delves on farm, I think since the start. Like I think it was like a week before I could like just like, you know, easy mode stroll through them. I wonder if that's like a DPS thing or it's just like I've done so many delves that I like.
You know, it's probably just like familiarity thing, part of it. Yeah. I was doing the one, have you ever done the delve where you're like following the girl spider and she keeps morphing into other spiders? That's like a bad way of phrasing
it. Is
it.
this the puppeteer one?
About? Oh, maybe, I guess.
Which
is the one... Yeah, the first room is a bunch of waves of guys, right? Then the next room is there are like spinning frost things. You have to kill things in the middle of the circle.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the one that killed me. And it was just kind of because I didn't really like, I was killing guys outside of the circle. Like I went into the circle, the trap sprung, and I was just kiting things backwards, and I like killed a bunch of stuff, and it was just spawning new stuff. And eventually I just kind of got like overwhelmed, and I realized I didn't even get any credit for the stuff that I was killing because you have to be in the circle to get it. And then I was like, well, I'm going to take the flicker gate out of here. So I had walked forward. I had started spawning things. I saw the flicker gate and I was like, oh, I can get out of this harrowing situation and just finish the delve that way, because I've done the flicker gates before, by just walking to the flicker gate and taking it. And then it spawned Kaiveza and she showed up and killed me. And I was like, well, I guess I fucking deserved that. And then I don't even remember. There was like a third time I died and I was like, oh, well, I'm out of lives. Never mind, I guess.
That flicker like circle, that doesn't always spawn a gate. That just adds a new that will always add a chest at the end, but it doesn't always spawn. Like the gates can either spawn on those gates or at the meeting stone. I think there might be a third place that it happens, but
yeah, I like the flicker gates because I mean, the what I think of them as doing is taking you to like that fucking train station or whatever it is. It's like a weird thing, but you can complete the delve that way. You just go down, you fight a couple of bosses, and it's fine.
No, that is the fastest way to complete them, and so I like it when they happen. But they're not guaranteed to spawn. Is my point.
Makes sense.
But like,
well, I guess I haven't done enough delves this season, but like I'm trying to farm out these gildeds.
The little thing that you can click on will all like if it doesn't spawn a gate, we'll just put a chest at the end of the run with some bullshit in it. I'm actually at the point where I don't need to do anything anymore because I have all hero gear and I'm capped on it, and I do not care enough to do mythics to like actually get a piece of mythic tier gear. So I'm out of. The only thing I'm working on right now is getting level 10 in the Hollowfall faction, like the season 2 catch-up mechanic Hollowfall faction.
Like the Radiant Flame, or whatever they're called.
Yeah, and I'm at level 9, so
yeah, because it's going to be part of the Platinum achievement, right?
Yeah, yeah. assuming that drops
Not
at some
excited
point.
for us. Yeah, I think it might be coming in the next patch. Well, the next patch brings housing. Are you excited for that?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
I feel like it's the kind of thing that I care about a lot, and I think is really sweet. But I also feel like there are going to be a lot of people who just are like, "What's the point of this?"
Yeah. No, I mean, like, I will get it, and I will have fun with it, but I don't care enough about it to, like, you know, if you asked, you know, if you were like, it will motivate certain things, but it also isn't going to be enough for me to, like, I don't know if I'm going to spend endless hours on it type of deal.
It's a very expressive game mode, which I actually think WoW has been missing for quite a while. Maybe the last time I felt like a really like expressive game thing, it's like Trial of Style. Maybe is like the closest kind of one, and obviously it's like very minor. Like the whole point is it's just a thing to help you, you know, be kind of like creative or whatever. And I think those kinds of players are going to get into it, and I'm those kinds of players sometimes. So we'll see.
No. For me, it's just kind of like WoW already takes up like kind of a baseline amount of time, and it's like, am I going to be like spending? Like, it would have to be a time when I'm not playing any other game for me to be like, I need to spend, you know, 3 hours playing dollies, which, you know, I want to do sometimes, but like, you know, I don't know how often I want to do it.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with Rachel about that, where I was like, I kind of think what housing is going to be is like a frenzy and then a famine. We're going to go really hard for housing in the beginning, and then everyone's going to kind of make a house that they all go, this is cool, this is neat, this is great, right? And then you just leave it, right? Like you've done the thing. It's like when you save a cool transmog and you just keep transmogging and do it over and over and over again. Like how often do people make a new one? You know, sometimes, but
yeah. And I can you use like save housing configurations? Because I think that might actually be helpful, right? Like if you can like hot swap between different house types, then like maybe I'd be motivated to be like, oh, I've got some new stuff. I'm going to build like, you know, my undersea house. I'm going to build my, you know, my I don't know, Twilight cultist house, right? But like if I have to like totally deconstruct and reconstruct the house every time without any ability to shortcut that, I'm going to build my favorite version of the house, and just like, you know, I'd say like 70 to 80% of the time I am in my fisherman's transmog on Billabong, right? But every once in a while I'll like do a new transmog and hang out in like, you know, my Halloween transmog, or like my, you know, my monk heavy transmog, or like I got a cool sword and I built a transmog around the sword transmog. But that is based around the fact that I can just click a button and go back to my fisherman's transmog when I need to.
Yeah, I have no idea if housing is going to work that way. I hope so, I guess is what I would say.
Yeah.
That seems like a good idea to me.
Plus, you can charge gold for it and have it be another gold sink to just switch between them, which is how transmog works, right? Like,
well, transmog is actually changing you do pay gold to like assign a transmog, but now when you get a new item, you don't have to pay gold to re-transmog that item. It just, that slot gets transmogged into whatever your transmog is at that given, you know, like at that given time.
Oh, okay.
And so even if you get new shoulders, it'll take on whatever the transmog appearance is, which is a quality of life thing that I'm very happy for.
Yeah, though I do like that quite a bit. You know, it's not, and it's more an annoying, like that feels like should be that way just because you can't guarantee, like, you know, guaranteed to have your transmogger on hand at any time, which, yeah, that makes sense to me.
Okay. Well, is that?
Yeah. I would say, like,
Hey, are we going to watch Avatar 3? I've been thinking about this all week. This is the dumbest question to ask, I know, but
I haven't, I like saw like an Avatar on my timeline once, and I have not investigated. I assume that did they drop a trailer for it?
It's sweet. I am like the only fan of this in all of existence, but Avatar 3, it looks as though it's called Avatar Fire and Ash, okay? And the plot seems to be that the native people, whatever, the Na'vi, are bad guys, okay? Which is, there's like I don't know, there's a whole thing about this like evil, yeah, exactly, where like an evil shaman who's sort of like a dark opposite to Neytiri is like, oh, Awa, where was Awa when this fucking volcano erupted and destroyed my town, or whatever her motivation is. And it looks like she like hangs out with the bad guys, which I think is the coolest. I don't know. I watched the second Avatar again on the airplane, and I was just like kind of blown away by how much I liked it on just the like simplest. It's it's like a simple story told well, right? Like just so straightforward. But I sometimes that's what you need.
I want the realistic version of this, which is like, Earth comes back, kicks the stupid blue people out of the way and like grabs the unobtainium. Like, fuck you. Really?
Listen, that's going to be me in EU5 next week, okay, on the podcast, where I tell you all about scourging, Hispaniola, like its three demands in my historical run of Spain.
Fair enough.
Dark jokes. In Minecraft, okay.
Yeah, I'm going to commit genocide in Europa Universalis.
It's funny to me that this has not happened. I mean, maybe there has been a discourse about it that I have not seen, but like, if you interrogate the politics of any 4X game, they're brutal. These are like,
buddy,
the
type of people who would complain about that kind of thing do not have the patience or maybe even the intelligence to understand how to play these games.
I think you're probably right. I don't know. It seems like Europa Universalis has really broken through. I even saw that the Crusader Kings community is really pissed about EU5, which, to be fair, has dropped in a pretty impeccable state, I will say. Outside of the fact that this game is complicated as fuck, and I hate that I lose money sometimes, and I'm like, what is going on? Why? Or like things like I don't know. I could not figure out how to put food on boats, transport it to supply depot that I had set up when I was trying to siege Mallorca. And I basically was like, well, I'm just going to station 25,000 units here, and they're going to take 5% starvation attrition, but it's going to be enough that in a year and a half, the siege is going to end and I'm going to win. And so I lined up,
brute force,
however many. It is a pretty brutal attrition. It is 5% attrition per month, and I did it for 18 months. So you do the math on how many loyal Spaniards I killed because I could not figure out how to get my elite Spanish Navy to deliver fucking food to the siege that I was conducting. But whatever.
Did you ever figure it out?
No, I did not. The thing that I ended up doing was I figured out that I could turn. There's a thing that's supposed to do this for you. It's called naval logistics, where you can essentially just tell your ships, "Hey, pick up food and deliver it to my armies." Right? If you toggle on naval logistics, I would toggle on naval logistics. The fleet would go pick up food, which I was not sure how to tell them to do, and then just sit in port with it. They wouldn't take it to the army. This was the problem. So then I was like, okay, well, I'll take it to like the siege district, but that didn't seem to work. And the thing that I realized is that if I crack the army in half and I put one on a settlement or a location on the island that I had already sieged down, okay, and I park the ships on that group will start ticking food up and empty the ship, and then I can swap them. So these guys will start ticking down, but they would always go through the food before I could re-up it. So I did a little bit to stop the attrition, but I definitely lost like 10,000 kind-hearted Spaniard soldiers, okay, just to fucking siege Mallorca and then have France take one of the islands away from me. God damn it, France.
This feels like a meme where like, it's, the general's like, 10,000 more men to the island. And it's like, and the supplies, sir. Fuck it, I can't figure it out. Right? Like you're sitting like you're sitting on the throne with like the manual, like a scroll, upside down scroll. It's like.
So there is a DLC of Hearts of Iron 4 that is literally that, which is called No Step Back, which is the Hearts of Iron DLC about the Eastern Front, the USSR. And like the Germans, and they added in buttons for things like, my soldiers have half as many supplies as they need, so they're all going to pair up, and when one of them dies, the other one automatically picks up his gun, which was a real...
like one person carries the gun, one person carries the bullets, and like...
Yeah, exactly. The forums were sort of talking about how wild it was that, like, they were putting in game systems to account for the historic undersupply of the Soviet, of the Soviet war machine. And I was a little like, this is kind of brutal, but also I appreciate their dedication to realism or whatever else. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
Anyway.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good place to leave it. If you'd like to email us about any of the things we talked about on this podcast, which Castilian counties you would like to conquer, you can email us at nerdsplitgames@gmail.com or podcast@nerdsplitgames.com. You can follow us at twitch.tv/nerdsplitgames or youtube.com/@games where these go out live. Rate and review us wherever you find podcasts. All the links will be down in the description. Buddy, do you have anything else you're looking to promote?
Gigasword is out. So, you want to play listen, talking about Zelda, okay, and the timeline. Go try Gigasword. It's on PC, Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo Switch, all the fun ones. So, go nuts.
I have bought Gigasword. I will admit that I am saving it for my flight to Europe after, on my honeymoon, so I'm not going to play it quite yet, but I'm excited.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, with that, I'm going to say until next time, dear listeners.
Until next time, loyal listeners.